Hello, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode number 635, the pre-show, the magical time of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and say outrageous things.
You know that there's no way for a male broadcaster to say the word ladies on television without it sounding creepy.
Yep.
So that's kind of random.
Well, you said hello, ladies and
No,
gentlemen.
he's talking about the hailstone. Oh my goodness, that's frightening.
That's
So,
a hell of a hailstone.
That's fake feet.
Fake feet.
Is this a stage picture, James?
Those are fake feet. That's not a real picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be Coffeyville, Kansas, right there.
Yeah, I know.
That place in South Dakota, would it be as big as the largest U.S. hailstone ever?
Yeah.
We had a storm last year in Seymour, Texas, and somebody was out closing their gate or the fence or something like that, and they got hit with probably a tennis ball sized hailstone in the hand. And I got a hold of some pictures, and the guy, had a knot on his hand that was almost as big as a tennis ball, and it was cut, and there was some blood coming from it. And I showed it on TV, and I got in trouble for showing a bloody hand on television.
HIPAA rules?
I don't know. They gave me static for it, the news director, and I was like, dude.
What did they say, Kevin? What would be the reason?
They just decided that wasn't appropriate for the news. It wasn't a long discussion. It was just like, oh, that's just not really. I mean, the number of. Never mind. I'll definitely get in trouble if I go further.
You brought down the Facebook, Kevin, so that's good.
Well, yes, I'm taking personal credit for that. It's.
I think you should. You were at the forefront.
What I'm waiting on is. There's a lot of focus on Cambridge Analytica and their misuse of the data. And what I'm waiting, and there are signs of it, but I'm waiting for the full pivot into they're collecting all of your data in private.
Yeah.
They're surveilling you.
And Facebook's response said that.
Yes. And they are a surveillance company, and
you signed it. We told you every time we did it, it popped up on your screen. You clicked right through it.
Yep. And I tweeted this was a couple of weeks ago after the last thing. I tweeted it. I said, at what point do we say, Mark, you can't stop doing these things and asking for forgiveness? And this is another example of that.
Well, they're not doing it now. They're selling all their stock. So
now they're what?
They're all selling their stock.
Well, and you know what? That's an interesting point too, because I was reading that the other day, and this was a week, and he's selling off all this stuff. But I can't name them, but there are a number of examples of this. He knows all the things before we know them because he has all the data, and he sees these problems bubbling up, and does some action before we really know about them. So you start to wonder if this was another sign of that. I mean, I don't think he's completely evil. He says he sold all that money to fund the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, or all the stock rather, foundation, whatever it is. And I'm sure that thing will do nice things, but he leads us on all of this stuff because he has all the data and he sees what's happening.
By the way, Brian, there's your feet right there.
Ah, yes.
From your hail picture. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that one.
Don't be pranked.
Yeah, I thought that one was a prank.
But most of it was all real.
Yeah. Did you see the young lady that posted her picture of getting hit in the head with a gash?
Yeah.
Don't show it on television.
Yeah, don't show it on TV.
I posted it. She was interviewed on the news tonight.
Yeah, that was a pretty serious wound.
Yeah, no, it was that was a bad deal, man. Those things will knock a hole in your head. So they had me out in Jacksonville tonight.
I saw you.
It was cold, man. It was like 47 degrees, north wind, 15 to 20, and raining. Oh, brutal.
Yeah. I remember one time when I was still in the weather service and you practically froze my tail off down in Tuscaloosa in 2000, December 2000. You remember that, James?
I do. So Thursday, how did I do this? I've got a school program in Florence, and then I'm going to Athens to speak at the University of Georgia AMS chapter. How did I do How did I put those two things in one day?
Because
You need a plane. You can borrow the jet that day.
Yeah.
I need a helicopter bad. I did. What's the matter with me? I mean, that's insane.
That's poor scheduling, sir. I hate to tell you this.
You know, I think when I saw that program, I thought it's like Central Elementary School, and you know, there's a bunch of Central Elementary schools, and I thought it was the one in like Tuscaloosa, which is a lot closer. But we'll make it work. I'm hoping to see John Knox and Marshall Shepard, our two friends over there.
Yeah, that'd be
So
good.
how will you, James? How will you get all the way to Athens from?
Well, you can go through Huntsville or go through Birmingham. Take your pick.
Oh, so you'll fly? Okay, good.
No. I'm driving, baby.
Oh,
I mean,
all right.
He's just going to put those strobes on the chaser and just boogie.
So Brian's gonna do the weather for you while you're gone.
Well, I'm not. I mean, I'm not working the night shift. Obviously, Charles is working the night shift. But
Chuck is
I
having
hope-
trouble getting in, James, but he had no trouble on the test.
Uh-oh.
That is not good.
What?
That's a theme. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bill, you know what? When I did Andrew and Irene, but what are you doing? How are you sharing this with them now?
I just take this URL out of the top of this hangout right here and just apply it.
This Hangouts stream, yada yada yada.
Yes, the one that ends in HL equals EN, and that dumps them straight into it. And it
See, James couldn't tell me
perfectly.
that.
See, I don't see the same thing you guys do. I've got a little thing that says invite people, and then
you don't have a URL at the top.
it says share the permanent link, and I think that's the link that you send people.
No, I think you're talking. It's like a browser window, right, next to the secure.
That's right.
That's what you tell them. Wow.
I just copy that, and somebody taught me that a long time ago.
I'm going to tweet that out and see what happens, just out of curiosity.
You mean tweet that link out
Right now, yeah, just to see how many people try and join the show.
Oh, brother.
That may be good because you're not going to have Chuck Doswell.
Dr. D, we'll get him on here. I think I mailed mine earlier, Brian.
You did, sir.
Yeah,
I have yours.
I think
I
I'm
don't know
in.
why would he be having a problem. He didn't have a problem the other night. I want to go to bed, so I need to get him on here. I have a terrible cold. I got to get rid of it. Ugh.
Aubrey's the only one we've heard from, right?
Yes.
Okay, because
And we don't have.
Nate or Kim.
Well, they might take TV, but I invited Kim. I invited everybody. I mean, everybody's been invited. So, what do we do for fun now? Twiddle our thumbs.
But we don't get to be on time for a change. That's good.
So is the weather service going with an EF3, James? For the
Yes.
What was the link? 30 miles?
They don't know. Darkness shut them down. They're gonna come back tomorrow and work it in Cleburne County, and I'm pretty sure it went all the way through Cleburne, and then they'll pick up Atlanta's track. And I would not be shocked if it's 50 miles or longer.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. That was quite a nice velocity couplet.
Yeah, the signatures were pretty incredible.
By the way,
What time
James,
Remember?
go ahead.
Was it 8:55 or 8:45?
Do what now?
Did the tornado hit Jacksonville at 8:45 or 8:55?
I think it was 8:35.
Okay, good.
But yeah, I was just there. Like I said, they had us over there doing the early newscast, and it's I am not there to sightsee. So I just went to our little spot and did our thing and came right back. But it never is a good thing when you drive through that. It's just horrifying.
Did the the envelope guy show up?
Yeah, so some, we get all this hate mail, and some guy he sent a little note by email. And most people send the hate stuff now on social media, but the email said enough is enough. Get off, So I just sent him a little. I don't respond to most of them, but
well, at least he signed his name.
He did. I challenged him a little bit. And I said, have a little compassion. And then he sent a note back to me.
Your definition of a little bit doesn't fit mine.
He sent a note back and he said, well, when it leaves, the Birmingham metro area, you should go to a crawl. And I lit into him like flies on poop after that.
I bet.
And then he said he's new to the area and semi-apologized and went away. So let's start this thing because I'm in the same boat. If everybody's got to go, might have a problem because I have not even been in that studio. I
want
to
push to tomorrow night, James? Would that help? I don't think I'm gonna have any better chance to get him on tomorrow night than I do tonight.
I'm about to say let's try. I need one night to get some stuff done. So let's try it tonight if we can. But I was going to say
don't get him on here.
If everybody's got to leave early, I need somebody because I'm going to have to leave here at 9:30 Central because I have not even touched that graphics box. Megan came in and did graphics on her show, and I've got to build everything for the 10 o'clock. So
you should have called. I would have gone in and backed you up there.
Well, Megan came in and backed me up, but she made her graphics in her show. So I got to have it in mind.
Sorry to bail on you last night. I didn't want to interrupt you at that particular stage.
No, it's all good. It was a good night. I mean, nobody died.
Yeah, from that aspect, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to say that's pretty good. I mean, and plus in Holman, most of the businesses were closed, and everybody shut down and went home and got out of the way, and I think the system worked.
Yeah, the no loss of life energized me because I'm thinking it was going to be a rough day. I had a school in Cleveland County, then a midday talk in Birmingham to a business group, and then I had to go back to Jacksonville. If I had to do all that, I wouldn't have made it. But
wow,
thank goodness the Cleveland County school was closed because of damage to the system. And so that gave me a little breathing time. But the no loss of life really was a good energy boost.
Yes, it was.
And the ratings were really strong.
By the way, I got several compliments on the look of our video.
Yeah, the live view is much better. I mean, it's much better.
You know who was very jealous? John.
Who, Big John?
Yeah.
Well,
he was very jealous of the quality.
We'll load him up with a live view.
You better talk to our IT guy before you start offering that.
Well, no, the news director told me he wanted to put a live view in Brown's vehicle. So.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful.
Or software. I mean, it's an app or whatever.
The problem I understand from the IT guy is that there are only 8 channels. So when everybody is out, you still only have 8. So
we're not going to have more than 8 live shots at any given moment, are we? I mean, surely not.
Well, I don't know how many we had last night. We
can always use ENG and satellite. But we did this. Our shot was satellite from Jacksonville because the cell system's overloaded and it's kind of quirky. And one day after a big tornado like that, but I don't know. I will.
Well, I'm just expressing to you the IT guy's concern about we only have X number of channels and that's it. And they have to be assigned. So,
okay. Well, let's get this thing. Look, let's roll it. If Chuck makes it, great. If not, great. We can just be a bunch of cranks. I miss that show called Cranky Geeks with John C. Dvorak. That was awesome.
They're not doing
all
it
right.
anymore?
No, they that thing had been produced in like 5 or 6 years. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, this is WeatherBrains episode number 635 for March the 20th. The equinox. Hey, spring is officially here. So let's see. Brian, you bought into the old adage of you can balance an egg on its end today, right?
No, I have
No.
never bought into that adage.
You know,
I sometimes have
I-
trouble balancing myself on the end.
I did that one time on TV because, you know, the old wives' tale, you can balance an egg on its end only on the day of the equinox, which is a scam.
Yeah, yes.
But I did it on TV one night, and I had put a little pinhole in there and got all the stuff out of the egg, and it was like hollow, and I kind of glued it down to the desk, and I put like 3 or 4 of those out there. But no, don't even get me started on these old wives' tales.
Are you telling me that you scammed your audience?
Well, I'm saying I tricked them, and then I pulled it off and showed them it's a little pinhole, and you know, Kevin, Kevin, are you one of these egg balancing guys on the equinox day? Oh,
Kevin's
lost his voice.
We've lost your audio.
I'm sorry. I think that's breaking news that you scammed your audience there. I think that's a show title or something.
Yeah, that is a show title.
The other thing
Kevin,
you can do with that is you make a little tiny little pile of sugar and stand the egg up in it, and then if you blow the sugar away, maybe 1 or 2 of those grains stays and holds it up. Okay. Good night, everyone. Thanks. I'll see you next week.
Houdini of the weather.
You'll learn a lot on this show.
Nothing useful, but a lot.
Rick Smith has been teaching so many Skywarn classes. Are you tired of these things yet, Rick, or do they energize you?
No, it's always good to get out and see the real people out in the real world. And most of the time, the drives are fun and get to listen to WeatherBrains on the way home. So it hadn't been bad. And James, I don't see what you did as scamming your audience. I see it as you were offering a teaching moment to show them how easy it is to be fooled. So
yes, exactly. I mean, how gullible are we?
Really?
Goodness.
And Rick is running for governor.
I'm running for my life. That's all I'm running for.
So I was in. I want to thank all the WeatherBrains listeners I met. I mean, it was a huge group of WeatherBrains listeners in Indianapolis at the Central Indiana Severe Weather Symposium. We had a ball. We had a lot of laughs, took a pile of pictures, and that was awesome. In fact, I had one guy. He came up and basically quoted everything I say in the pre-show when it opens up, and then he knew more about this show than I know about this show. So, but we had it really is. But we had a great time, and thanks to everybody for coming up to say hello. And next stop will be, I do 2 talks every year in the spring at college settings or in symposiums or conferences. And the second one will be this week, Thursday, March 22nd at the University of Georgia, at their local AMS chapter meeting. So if you happen to be in Athens or in Atlanta or somewhere nearby, come on over. We'll have a party. In fact, I'm going to be talking about some stuff I've never talked about before.
Oh, you need a better teaser than that.
Well, I'm going to throw in some stuff from what happened here last night. For those that don't know, on March 19th, we had a pretty serious severe weather situation with really catastrophic hail and some long track tornadoes. And it worked, guys. It worked. Nobody died. We had some injuries. There's one pretty serious, but they're going to be, they're going to live. But and again, we're still doing the damage surveys. At the time we're doing this show, we don't have the final damage surveys in, but the fact that nobody died is a big success, I think, in the work we have all done as an enterprise and an integrated warning team to make the system better based on social science and physical science and everything else. So, but I'll be talking about that. But I'll tell you guys one thing that, and again, the traffic is so intense prior to these events across everything, email, social, everything. But I saw one post on Facebook. Somebody posted on my page a picture of a young woman, and right away I knew who it was. It was Lauren Brown, and the post said, James, this is Ashley Mims. I know that today's going to be a really rough day, and I just thought I would try my best to show people you need to put a human face on these kind of days. This is my daughter, Lauren. She was killed April 27th, 2011, and I want people to think about that and understand this is serious business and to take the warning seriously tonight. And that really motivated me. And I have met Ashley in person. We talked a long time at an event back this past spring. She is one of the people, her daughter Lauren was featured in the book, What Stands in a Storm. She's one of the 3 that died at 31 Beverly Heights, along with Danielle Downs and Will Stevens. But seeing that face, it's just something about seeing those faces. And then some other people started posting their pictures of relatives or friends that died that day. And you know what that does. And I put this, I'm going to be at the top of my game tonight. And I was exhausted. I didn't feel good. I've been, traveling, and you guys don't know how bad it is in my shoes 48 hours prior to a big day, handling the social media traffic. And I do my best to answer every question and respond and do constant updates. And the problem with that, you're drained. You are physically drained, emotionally drained by the time the day starts. And you're basically out of gas, which is dangerous because you need to be fueled up and ready on that day if it's going to be a long day. But that post by Ashley Mims showing her daughter Lauren really motivated me and helped me up the game a little bit, and to get through that type of situation with no loss of life. Again, that energizes me. So I'm thankful for Ashley for doing that. And again, if you've not read Kim's book, she's been on the show before. It's called What Stands in a Storm. And you can learn more about Lauren. I never knew Lauren, of course, but I feel like I know her because of the book and talking with her mom. So guys, there's a human side to this. And I just think sometimes we forget. So,
how was the pre-event hype level this time? Good, bad, medium?
I think the professionals played it right. We had this, you've got the standard problem with these Facebook pages, this will be worse than April 27th, 2011. This is a death watch, all this insanity. There's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can do about it. But I think the National Weather Service, the broadcasters, the emergency managers were very responsible. But, the one thing I tried to put down in every one of my posts in this world of hyperbole is, guys, this is March. Okay. This is when this stuff happens. Oh, all look right. Who's here. Dr. D.
Gotta go. See you guys.
Yeah. Well, no. This is like awesome. Our guest is here.
I did get him here, and I am going to bug out so I can go to bed. So I'm so excited that we've got Dr. Chuck Doswell with us tonight. So thanks for hanging in there, Chuck.
Okay. It was a struggle.
Yeah, you did. Email saved us. Firefox decided to deprecate Hangouts, James, since our test over the weekend. So we had to do a little finagling to get it to work. So
Bill officially introduced Dr. Doswell here, and we'll get into this. I can't wait. This might be the great show.
It's just not even possible. I called him on our forecast last night. I said the inestimable Dr. Chuck Doswell. I'm not even sure what that word means, but it sounds really good. So let me give you the inestimable, and I can't even say it tonight since I'm so tired and stopped up. But let me give you Dr. Chuck Doswell. So have a great show, guys.
Get better, Bill.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely,
better.
Bill.
Yeah.
I just looked it up. Inestimable means too great to calculate. So there you go.
Ooh,
we can't calculate.
There we go.
Whoa!
Yeah.
I picked a good one.
If I had a nickel for every time Chuck's name was mentioned at this weather seminar in Indianapolis, I could retire. I don't think you know how legendary that you are.
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't really want to know.
How legendary do you think you are?
Maybe a little.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
There are certainly legends about me. Whether I am legendary is another question.
Yes. So scale of 1 to 10, how legendary in the enterprise?
I have no clue.
I'll say 8.
Mhm.
No, I'll say 9.
I was going to say 9.2.
Yeah.
8's awfully low. At least a 9.3.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, I'm flattered, but it'll get you nowhere, guys.
No, it's pretty big. I was up in Rick's office a couple of weeks ago, and I snuck out of his media workshop a few minutes early. And Rick, Howie Bluestein was in the lobby giving a talk to people on those big monitors that were there. I've not met him, and I was like, wow! I actually went into the picture. So Chuck and Howie are both up there 9.2 on the legendary scale.
I got to tell you, that's one of the weirdest, coolest, most surreal things about working in that building.
Yes.
You just casually bump into Howard Bluestein or Chuck or Harold Brooks or Don Burgess. It's like, oh my gosh, these are like the legends. So it's cool.
Yep.
Well, you won't be bumping into me very much.
Well, I used to.
Yeah.
Chuck, how often do you go over there?
Oh, maybe once every 2 weeks or so.
Oh.
Usually it's for a seminar.
So you just don't drop in at random times just to say hi?
No, not really. That's just not my shtick.
So let's talk here, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. And again, for those that don't know, I in my young years reading Dr. Doswell's papers at night, I have fun. The fact that I would even know him one day, I would melt down. So it's an honor for him to be on the show.
Yep.
So you were at Tessa, Chuck. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
And you did a talk on storm chasing.
Right.
And you said in your talk that storm chasers are by nature selfish. Kind of explain that. What kind of dive into that a little bit.
Well, I draw a comparison between chasers and spotters. Spotters are people who are doing something to help their community. They're not necessarily uninterested in storms, but their main purpose for being out there, they're all volunteers and they don't get paid, and they get very little acknowledgement or credit for the great work they do for their communities. So it's a basically unselfish act. They're not looking for any kind of reward. They're not trying to make money on it. They're not trying to become famous. Whereas chasers, of course, there are as many reasons for chasing as there are chasers. But most of them are selfish reasons. I go out, I readily admit I go out and chase for selfish reasons. I'm fascinated by the displays that the atmosphere puts on for me. I enjoy being out in the countryside and mingling with the folks of the plains. I enjoy eating at local restaurants and visiting local tourist traps. It's a lot of fun, and it's basically a vacation, which I consider to be a selfish activity.
So do you think that angered anybody in the chaser community? I totally agree with you. I mean, I totally agree. But some chasers, I think, still stick to the point where we're here to save lives and help rural economies.
That whole save lives thing is absolute crap. If they wanted to save lives, they should sign up for an EMT course and go out and work as EMTs. Being a storm chaser is not about saving lives. Can you point to anybody whose life was saved by a chaser?
Rick, do you know you're in the middle of chaser world?
Boy, you're gonna put me on the spot. I can't.
That's exactly what I do on this show.
I can't think of one off the top of my head. Now, I will say, not to dispute what Chuck is saying, because I agree with a lot of his points, but the distinction between chasers and spotters is a little bit fuzzier than it used to be. I mean, we clearly have spotters in our area that are kind of leaning toward the chaser side. I've never
had a problem with spotters who want to be chasers. In fact, I think it's a great idea.
Right.
But when they're out spotting, they presumably have an assignment.
Right. Yeah. And most of them do it. They have a location they need to be posted at, or they have an area to watch or whatever. That's exactly right. And they're tied to their communities. Usually they can't drive to Texas Panhandle because there's an interesting storm there. So,
well, one of the big differences between chasers and spotters that I like to point out, one of the things that I used to say when I gave spotter talks was that every time I go out, I see something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah,
you're
that's
just
good.
an quote unquote ordinary spotter, the number of storms that you would see in any given year is fairly small, unless it's just a fantastically busy year in your neighborhood that year. But
Right.
as a chaser, you can sample more storms. If I'm out for 2 weeks, I'll probably see 20, 30 different storms. And of those, maybe some fraction will be supercells, and some fraction of those will produce tornadoes. But every year, then, I see a fairly large sample of storms. So I've been doing this for more than 45 years. And so I've seen a lot of storms. And I'm still seeing things that I've never seen before. So chasing and spotting are not necessarily opposed to one another. I would recommend anyone who's a serious spotter to go ahead and chase, if for no other reason than to expand their vocabulary of storms.
That's exactly right. And first of all, I begin almost every spotter talk I do with that statement that you just provided, how that there are people that have been doing this for decades who still don't know it all, still don't understand it all, and still
Right.
haven't seen it all.
Right.
And secondly, your point is that's an excellent point. The best spotters, I think, are the ones that are kind of the hybrid chasers and spotters,
Right.
the chasers that are going out and looking a lot more storms. Because if you're just sitting in Godibo, Oklahoma, waiting for a storm to roll over you, you may not see one for a few years. You may see 2 or 3, but you're not going to get enough experience with them. So the best spotters are chasers who are feeding us reports, and we have quite a few of them. I mean, there's more than there used to be.
Yep. And I'm happy to hear about that trend. That's a good trend.
Yep.
I think Al Muller and I were trying to sell a lot of folks in the Weather Service on that concept as well.
Mm-hmm.
That we should encourage spotters, if they're really interested, to become chasers.
Yeah.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Just say, so you're still going out,
Yeah.
Chuck, and so I noticed we had an event here in my part of the world last night and yesterday.
Yeah, I watched it.
A lot of new faces, a lot of people I don't know in the field, and these are newer, younger chasers. What advice would you give somebody? Let's say they've been to Rick's class, they took the Skywarn class, and they want to become a chaser. What advice would you give them? What are the logical steps in terms of knowledge and in terms of equipment?
Well, knowledge. These days, it doesn't take any knowledge to be a storm chaser, and even a successful one. You go look at the convective outlook from the SPC, you wait for the tornado watch, you get out there and you turn on your mobile radar and you follow big storms. It takes essentially no meteorology anymore to be a successful chaser. So if you want to be a successful chaser, you don't have to learn much. Maybe next to nothing. I think I've met a lot of chasers who pretty much know next to nothing. And they kind of embarrass themselves even if they don't realize it. But nowadays,
but don't you think they might put themselves in a place of danger if they don't have basic knowledge of how convection works?
Of course. Now, no question of that. If people are ignorant about their quarry, as I used to say back in the Stone Ages, some days you eat the bear and other days the bear eats you. You put yourself in harm's way often enough and you're ignorant enough not to know how to deal with it. One of these days it's going to get you. And I will say that in all honesty, I could be gotten, because all it takes out there is one mistake and you're in deep trouble and you may not be able to get out of it. So it could happen to anybody. If it happened to Tim Samaras and his crew, then it could happen to anybody. in my opinion.
What if you were starting over and if you had an unlimited budget, what equipment would you take with you on the road on a chase?
Well, I'd probably carry my usual complement of camera gear. I now have a DSLR that can be used to take video, so I don't have to carry a separate video camera. And I would carry, obviously, a laptop or some device to plug into all of the data streams that are available. But I'm not a high-tech chaser. I go out there with a relative minimum of stuff. I use my laptop mostly in the morning to make a forecast, and I chase with my smartphone using the radar capability.
And what radar app is on your phone, out of curiosity?
I forget the name of it. It's one of the main reasons I got the dang phone.
And whoever's the winner here, Radar Scope. All right.
When I saw that years ago, I said, "Okay, Vicky, you can buy me a phone now." So
Mike Wolfenbarger just stood up and fainted.
Yeah, well, it's a great app, and it's only gotten better.
Amen.
So you're saying you don't check the Twitter or the Face Bag or the Instagram on your phone, Chuck?
Not hardly.
No.
I'm gonna take full responsibility. If I screw the pooch, that's the way it goes. I'm not gonna have anybody to blame, and if I succeed, I don't have anybody to share the credit with. So that's fine by me. I don't really care what other people think, and what they're doing and where they're going and why they're going there. I don't really care.
So how often do you go out these days during the tornado season?
Well, I have one or possibly two tours with Tempest Tours coming up. We're not exactly sure how that's going to go yet.
So what you're saying, if you wanted to go out with Dr. Chuck Doswell, you had that opportunity still.
Yeah.
Okay. So when do you announce your schedule?
Well, it's on the web. Anybody who's interested, just do a Google search on Tempest Tours.
And that's very interesting to me. So let's say that we've got some college student or forget that. Let's say a businessman who's 38 years old and he's got 2.2 kids and minivan, but he's been a weather weenie all his life. He loves storms and he's got the financial ability to pay for this thing. And he signs up. What can people expect when they go on one of these tours? And I'm talking about the ones that you do.
Right. Well, I'd say that most of them don't know me from Adam. So, my level of legendariness doesn't spread far outside the small puddle that is meteorology. But most of them don't know much. And so they're coming on the tour with me to learn. And so I'm forced to do something that I'm terribly reluctant to do. I have to talk. And I have to talk at length about storms. Well, gosh, please don't throw me in that briar patch. I mean, to me, that's just a heck of a lot of fun. And I try to dispel some of the myths that they may come into the chase with. And curiously enough, I'd say probably about 20% of them, I continue to communicate with them via social media. So I've got a whole bunch of my friends on Facebook that are former clients with Tempest Tours. Plus, awesome. I want to say one plug. The very first tour that I ever did with Tempest, we had a young lady with us whose parents could afford to pay for this expensive vacation. And she was an undergraduate meteorology major. And we had a good time, and she just sort of drank up everything that we could give her. And in the end, she got her doctorate and is now a scientist in Boulder, publishing successful PhD scientist. So, that sort of thing is not something I expect to see every time I'm out. But it's nice when you run into someone who is thirsty for knowledge and experience, and they use this as a vehicle for getting started. And I think it's a great way to do that. I got to tell an anecdote. We had a guy and his daughter with us. He had paid for both of them. And we had been out about 4 or 5 days, maybe a little longer. And he looked at me, he says, gosh, if I'd have known there was this much driving to it, I wouldn't have come. Apparently he gets car sick and has all these problems. And I just looked at him dumbfounded. What in the world did you think we did?
Yeah. Is there some driving involved? Well, do you think so?
Yeah. So it's fun. Most of the clients I've met are great. And there have been a few clunkers, but in any group of people, you're almost bound to get a clunker now and then.
You got that right. All right, let's change the subject a little bit. Facets. What are your thoughts?
I don't know much about it.
Really? I thought you would know everything about it.
No, not really. I guess you're talking about the whole warrant on forecast business.
Now, this is the new.
The social media or social science thing.
No, what Facets is. This is the new. What's going to go from the current Polygon warning system to a continuum type thing that's constantly changing and it's fast. It's coming out of the National Severe Storms Lab. Lance Roth.
Remember, I quit working there 16 years ago.
Yeah, but come on, you're Dr. Chuck Doswell. You know everything.
Yeah, right.
It's.
You believe that? I've got a bridge I want to sell you.
Facets is forecasting a continuum of environmental threats.
Right.
Next generation.
I think that's a great idea.
Warning framework. That's and I've seen their video. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
And
I think it's great. Greg Stumpf and I talked about it when I was still there, and we both agreed that we needed something like that, some sort of continuum as opposed to, you jump from one box to another.
Yeah, it's kind of like binary, and it goes from binary to this continuum.
Right. So. Right. Now, I think it's going to take some time for people to get comfortable with it, and some people will probably never be comfortable with it. But I think the basic concept is a good one. The atmosphere doesn't know anything about these arbitrary boundaries we create. So why create them? If you don't have to, and you don't, then this is a better way to look at things, I think. If
Rick
it's
Smith,
executed properly.
When do you think Facets will be implemented? Will I be dead, or will it be sooner? Of course, I might drop dead tomorrow with how I feel right now. But
gosh, I don't know much more than Chuck does about it. But I don't know. I mean, I think we could see facets of Facets being tested.
Yeah.
Sometime soon in the real world. I mean, I think it's going to come out in pieces. It's not going to be a flip the switch and hey, here's the new system. We're going to see little chunks of it coming out, and it'll be tested in offices. One good thing about Facets, I think it seems like they're doing it right. I mean, it seems like they're building it kind of from the ground up instead of just patching on to what we already have. And it seems like there's good social science and physical science going into the process, and a lot of really smart people are working on it
with you guys as they do that.
Oh yeah, we are involved in the test bed. We always have someone in there, but there's a lot of good meteorologists from different offices around the country, because this has to be an all hazards thing. This is not an Oklahoma tornado thing. This is a wildfire thing, and eventually it'll be an all hazards thing. So there's a lot of really smart people working on it, and I'm excited about it. I don't know when we'll see it, but we'll start to see pieces of it here in the next couple of years, I think.
As long as they stay tuned into the operational community, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, and they're doing a very, very good job of that. So.
Yep.
So, Chuck, let's say that you've got Louis Ussolini in a room, and he comes up to you and he says, Dr. Doswell, I want you to tell me 3 things we can do to make the National Weather Service better. What 3 things would you tell him?
That's a fascinating question.
And you got all the time in the world. You got as long as he gives you, he could give you all day. He wants to make the weather service better. You're the legendary Chuck Doswell.
Okay, well,
three things.
one thing is they have to implement my forecaster's postgraduate school. At this point in our history, we are still the only English-speaking nation in the world that has no meaningful training program for forecasters. They've got some settle for things, and I think, for example, a warning decision training branch or whatever they call themselves these days are doing great things, but it's trying to bail out the Pacific with a thimble. I think the big problem facing the Weather Service, either they put together something like what I'm talking about for the forecasters postgraduate school, or they just flat out convert to totally automated products.
But explain your postgraduate school concept.
Okay, well, I wrote an extensive essay about it on the web, and anybody who's interested can browse and find that. But the basic principle is that I want a training program that forecasters enter at entry level. It starts out with a very challenging examination to test how much they know out of what we think they're supposed to know. If they fail the exam, then they go into a remedial education program, which fills them in on the things that they're weak in. If they pass that, then they go into the regular school, and the school would be taught by operational weather forecasters who are serving on temporary duty with the postgraduate school. So they're coming from the field, and when they're done, they're going to go back to the field. So it's not some dead-end position. You're stuck in a training center for the rest of your life, unless you want to be. And the idea would be that we would have forecasters flow through those training programs. And the training programs would involve a daily lecture of some sort, preferably geared toward the weather of the day. And secondly, then they would do operational hands-on exercises using the same equipment they would use when they get to the field. Various kinds of exercises to test how well they've absorbed the material from the morning. And the school would have to last for a minimum of 6 months. And the reason it would have to last that long, number one, it takes time to learn how to do these things. And number two, you need to sample a wide variety of weather situations. And I figure in 6 months, you'd get a pretty good sample most anywhere. And the idea would be at the end of the course, people should fail. There should be people who fail. And in fact, there would be continuous monitoring of their performance. And at any point, somebody could hand them a red card and they're gone. I've always felt that in the Weather Service, there was a fair number of people who were the weather forecasting equivalent of a legally blind jet fighter pilot. These are people, and I'm sure most of us know some of them, who are in an office making forecasts and they have no business being there. They're the weakest link in their office's chain. Everybody prays they're not on duty when there's a tornado outbreak. These are the people that you look at.
How do those people get hired?
Well, there's no way to weed them out. They go through a in name only probationary period at the beginning of federal service, but you pretty much have to commit a felony to be washed out. And everybody passes in the Weather Service training courses. And I just don't think that's the right way to do business. We don't want a legally blind jet fighter pilot because said person would be so handicapped he really couldn't perform the duty. In the same way, if you get some bozo in there who has his own crackpot ideas about meteorology, and believe me, I've run into a few of those, that's not the kind of person you want in the office. They're a weak link. So I want to eliminate the weak links.
Okay, so that's number one. You want the practitioners to go through some type of intense, rigorous training routine.
That's right. That's right.
So you got two more ways to improve the current National Weather Service.
I would like to see it made mandatory that everybody in every office does a hand-drawn surface analysis every 3 hours minimum. And I would prefer that everybody in the office cooperate on doing upper air charts by hand. I learned a long time ago.
Do you think that's a lost? I think it's a lost art.
We're losing it. I don't know if it's lost yet, but it's certainly being lost. I know I've had to explain this a million times. The idea of having somebody draw lines on a chart is not the lines per se. I can get a computer to draw those lines and they'll be beautiful. They won't be shaky and they won't do strange things. The whole point of drawing a weather map is not to reconstruct some beautiful work of art describing the weather that day. The object is to help you get in touch with data, because you can't draw lines without looking at data. And when you draw lines, you have to look at all of the data. And what Bob Maddox and I found years ago when we taught in the flash flood training course, which is now dead, we found that many meteorologists, because they're used to seeing the patterns flash up on the screen and rotate by in mere seconds, they don't actually look at the data. They just don't look at it. So, for example, we used to give a thing called a pretest in that course. We had a picture of a thunderstorm in Atlanta on a summer day, and we asked them various questions about the structure of the atmosphere that you would expect to see in that situation. And it was a thunderstorm. We drew a little cartoony thunderstorm that had a perfectly symmetrical anvil. And I got answers for 500 millibar temperatures at the level where 500 would be, that ranged from like minus 60 to plus 5 Celsius at 500 millibars in the summer in Atlanta. And the answers that we got from that were so discouraging. They really told us that meteorologists, because they don't draw lines these days, have lost touch with data. They have no idea what a typical temperature looks like, a typical pressure value. And they have damn little understanding of thunderstorms.
Rick, how would you respond to that? Some forecasters say we're so busy now that we don't have time to do that.
Well, I typed in the chat that I'm going to have to find another job if we implement any of these. That's making me very nervous. No, I agree. I mean, it is. I'll readily admit I don't hand analyze maps very often. People in our office, we just don't. It's just not done much anymore. It's done some places.
When I hear the argument, which I often do, the argument is that we don't have time for that. Okay, well then my question is, what are you doing with your time?
Right.
Okay, and what most of them do, which is absurd in the extreme, is they're struggling to find the model of the day. Out of the plethora of models they have to look at, they have to decide which one is the right one. To my knowledge, there is absolutely no scientific, systematic way to do that. And so all of that effort, that entire effort, scrolling through a dozen different model outputs to try to figure out which one is the best one, is a complete and total waste of time. wasted time. They could be better spent analyzing the surface map. Put that effort into something that actually teaches you something about what the atmosphere is trying to tell you. Don't put it into trying to figure out stuff you can't figure out.
So if you had to make a choice, you would say draw the surface analysis before the upper air analysis.
Yeah. Well, the surface analysis
there's deeper data there, yeah.
The surface analysis has, more data density, and so you get a more complete picture. Nowadays, with all the meso networks going into operation, you got a lot more surface obs than you used to. So it ought to be something that everybody just does routinely, not because they're trying to put together the most beautiful surface analysis ever, but it's a means to an end. And it's a means that forces you to look at the data and ask yourself, do I believe the data, or do I believe there's something going on? And maybe this weird data that I'm seeing is the first indication of that, or maybe it's an instrument error. So that sort of decision making is connected to the data. And if you stay connected to the data, I think you're going to be a better meteorologist.
Okay, so number one.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go.
No, I'm done with that.
Okay, so number one was an intense, rigorous training program for forecasters. Number two, hand-drawn analysis. What's number three? Way to improve the National Weather Service.
I want every manager in the Weather Service to pull at least 1 year out of 5 on the forecast desk. Regularly inserted in the rotation, doing forecasts the same way as everybody on the staff.
So not just to fill in from time to time, a regular rotation. Yeah.
But somebody that's actually on the job, doing the job every day for a long period. If they're going to make up dumbass rules, which management tends to do, then they would have to live with it. And I'll bet we'd see a lot fewer of those dumbass rules.
I'm with you there.
So I would assume you're talking MICs. Would this apply to mostly MICs, right?
Any of the day weenies.
That includes WCM, SUD.
Yeah. That's
and
right.
headquarters people, right? Lots of headquarters people.
Oh, yeah. I expect to see all the people in headquarters down at Louis' shop drawing lines.
So the question, Rick, now we're going to put Rick on the spot. When's the last time you've been in a regular forecast rotation?
A regular rotation? Oh, gosh. Let's see. I worked in Tulsa in 1999. So, yeah, that's the last time I was in a regular forecast rotation. Now, we fill in, like I worked a shift Sunday night. I'm working a shift in the morning, but I don't work nearly enough shifts. I have to agree with Chuck. I mean, to be in touch with what's going on out there, even in our office where we're out there for almost every severe weather event, but we're not out there working the midnight shifts and the routine dead of August, quiet shifts. I think it's good for managers to be in touch, and you can have a feel for what's really going on. I don't think without being out there. Now, I work less shifts probably than a lot of WCMs do at other offices around the country just because of our staffing and other things. But there's a lot of merit to what Chuck says with that one for sure.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that management tends to fall into the trap. This doesn't happen to everyone, but many of them tend to fall into this way of thinking that the staff works for them. Unfortunately, the way management should be is that they need to understand that managers do nothing productive in the agency. Okay, the productive people are the people who issue the forecasts. And if you are not one of those productive people, then the only reason you can justify your existence in your position is to help them do a better job, figure out ways to improve their situation, to make it better. And if you know what they do and how they do it because you've done it, You have a much clearer notion of what they need than if you're sitting in an office rubber stamping paperwork as it goes by. That's just my opinion, but I've only worked for a few good managers in my life. Bob Maddox was one. Another one was Ken Crawford.
Yeah.
And when I saw what Ken did, he understood that he couldn't look good if all of his people didn't look good. So he was very loyal to the staff. He had their back whenever any issues came up. He was very supportive. He pushed them to excel. I was at a conference when Ken had been MIC for several years. And somebody walked up while I was talking to Ken and said, well, I know why you guys are so good in that Norman office. You got a bunch of team of superstars. And Ken said they're the same people with two exceptions that were here when I started. They weren't superstars. He just gave them the encouragement and support that they needed to blossom and become successful in the office. And the office was famous for that sort of internal atmosphere of encouragement and support.
All right, let's move directions again. Do we need to revisit the EF scale?
Well, I'm to the stage now where I don't care about the EF scale. The Weather Service can do with it whatever they want, and they will. But what's going on now, I'm very excited about. There's a group of folks that have formed a committee. It's a standards committee in the American Society of Civil Engineers, and it's done in collaboration with the AMS. But the idea is to come up with good science and good engineering to support the wind speed estimation process. And so ultimately there would be a set of guidelines produced that would be considered best practices for how to estimate wind speeds without actually having a whole lot of anemometers in the mix. And the idea is I want to avoid another El Reno fiasco where your good buddy Louis Ussolini overrode the decisions by the local office and downgraded that tornado to an F3, which is, to me, the silliest, dumbest thing I've heard in decades. I mean, the rationale for justifying that was ludicrous. The idea was, well, we should be connected to all the methods we've used in the past. We shouldn't use all this newfangled radar stuff. Of course, the radar was the only thing that gave an objective measurement out there. And furthermore, using that logic, we should degrade the output of the WSR-88D to make it look just like a WSR-57. So we should only have the same tools that they had back in the mid-50s. That's ridiculous. You would think that an organization, and Louis is a PhD from my alma mater, Wisconsin, so he's no dummy. But how in the world he can arrive at that conclusion just leaves me mystified. A smart person should never say something like that.
We had Tim Marshall on the show last week, Chuck, and I think he's involved in that organization you're talking about.
Yeah.
We've decided they're going to call it the EEF scale if they do something new. So,
well, I think the Weather Service might, if they have any brains at all, buy into the resulting consensus that emerges. But the nice part about it is that the process is viewed as organic. It's living. So you don't need to upgrade the EF scale only when a bunch of people get together and say, these rules are horseshit and we need new ones. So we have a special meeting and we have an ad hoc exercise and we provide a new one. And then 5 years later, we do it all over again. Well, this is this is intended to be a continuing process. So the EF scale is just one of the ways in which the knowledge gained about how to estimate the wind speed will be put to use.
Every day, the Storm Prediction Center issues a convective outlook, and in their categorical outlook, they have the marginal, slight, enhanced, moderate, high. You could wave a magic wand. If you have power to change anything, you would change. Would you change anything at all? And if so, what would you change?
You mean from the SPC operation?
Yes, in terms of those daily convective outlooks.
I would shit can the categorical outlooks.
Why?
People need to confront the fact that what we're dealing with is probability. And the sooner the better. And the holding off, not calling it probability, is just delaying the inevitable.
So probabilistic outlook only. How would you present that to the public?
Just the way it is now.
So that using the same methodology they have now, just dropping the categories.
Yeah, I think people need to appreciate and begin to accept the fact that the products we provide are not categorical. Whether they're put in categorical form or not, they are not categorical. We at best deal with our science in probabilistic terms. Now, we may not necessarily think of it in probabilistic terms. And I know there's a heck of a lot of people in the Weather Service that have told me on many, many occasions, the public can't understand probability. Bullshit. They bet on horses, don't they? They know about odds. That's not such a tremendous leap. They go to the casinos and gamble. That's probabilistic. They have all sorts of uncertainties in their lives. I think if we were honest with them and gave them a product that represents our honest version of what we can do, I think we'd gain credibility.
So would you make any...
There's always going to be somebody out there who whines and carries on and complains. There's some percentage of people who are never going to be satisfied no matter what we do. They're always going to be insulting and whatever. I'm not trying to deal with everybody. I'm trying to reach, if we talked about it in political terms, I'm trying to reach the center of people. And, I think we could help them learn how to use probability, which might be a big factor in its acceptance. It's one area where I think the Weather Service has steadfastly dropped the ball. When probability precipitation was introduced in 1965, I was an undergraduate at the time. I didn't realize it, but it had been simply a stroke of the pen, and suddenly we're putting out probabilities. And there was no warm-up, there was no public announcements, there was no public education process to try to get people used to this radical new terminology. They just dumped it out there, and here we are decades later, and people are still griping about the probability because we dropped the ball when we first introduced it.
So would you make any change to the current tornado watch and severe thunderstorm watch products issued by SPC?
Well, I'm kind of drifting toward the warn on forecast notion. I think as that process evolves, I think it's going to get much more reliable. And they're talking about probabilistic products on their program. So I think that's headed in the right direction. I think also this facets bit makes more sense to me. In a fluid, dynamic situation, you have to be flexible. And so you have, like I was really impressed, by the way, with the parts of your broadcast that I heard last night. I want to congratulate you on identifying that boundary that those storms were becoming tornadic on. It was actually a pretty clear boundary in the surface analysis. But I thought what you were doing to convey the message to people was implicitly acknowledging the uncertainty. We can't tell you exactly where the danger area is because it could shift over there anytime. So Anniston was included in the warning, even if it at the beginning was a pretty low probability, and then the storms moved past, and so they never got hit. But you were saying what I thought was brilliant, saying basically, this is what we can do. And so this is how I'm trying to make sure you understand this message. And I think people could follow that general habit of, I'm so tired of people dissing the Weather Service when the Weather Service is bending over backwards trying to give them what they want, even though the Weather Service can't do most of what people want them to do. We made a bad bargain with our public decades ago when we agreed to do things that any smart person at the time knew we couldn't do. But
I totally agree. There's some things we can't do.
Yeah.
And why promise something that you can't deliver?
That's right. And don't make blanket absolute statements. Make sure people understand there's uncertainty at all levels here. Space, time.
Let me shift gears a little bit here. Here's something I've been struggling with: this tornado emergency.
Can I stop before? Before you shift? Well, just because I got it just off of the show, but let me just throw devil's advocate because I heard the last thing you say.
I thought I saw some horns on you.
Yeah, they're permanent. You can't miss them.
So you're always horny.
Yeah, whoa! There's
right there, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. That is the show title.
Yeah. And I guess any regular listener to the show will reel at the idea that I would even ask this, but again, I'm playing devil's advocate. So we made a deal with the devil and we promised things that we couldn't necessarily deliver. So how do we going forward deal with the competitive nature? I'm speaking specifically of television or a website like AccuWeather versus the Weather Channel, so on and so forth. There's a competitive element to what's going on, right? And so that's going to breed one-upsmanship. And if you're doing 7 days, we're going to do 8, and yada yada yada. And so that's a pretty powerful force that I don't know that we can do anything about. Yeah,
I would say trying to manage the private sector is pretty much impossible.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't want to police themselves, or if they don't police themselves in a way that we would consider appropriate, there's nothing we can do about it. Competitiveness, there's all sorts of aspects of competitiveness. Most of the forecasters I know, if you don't have a certain amount of confidence in what you're saying and what you're doing, you probably shouldn't be in the job. But that confidence sometimes leads you to champion things that don't work out. You just got it wrong. And one of the things that I worked on very hard when I was in the forecast side of things a little deeper was to try to view my operational work as part of a team effort and make sure that I always got feedback from people around me telling me, and the people that were around me were not so fascinated with my legendary status that they wouldn't tell me that I was screwing up. So, I was blessed with a lot of good friends and colleagues when I was more operationally oriented. But I've been trying to convince people ever since that team concept is important. And so you actually, that competitiveness, I think I know better than you what's going to happen, and here's why. That kind of discussion, if it doesn't turn into name calling and punches, if it actually leads people to think about more what they're doing more carefully and more thoroughly, that can't be anything but helpful.
And you said, and I think we all know that there's clearly no way that broadcasters or professionals are going to self-monitor.
Right.
Is there any way then to monitor? Is that the job of the AMS or the NWA, or we should just give up on that notion?
The AMS has pretty much abdicated any sense of responsibility for ethics of its members. When they tried with Irving Crick, and they sort of failed and took a lot of heat for it. Now they've got teams of lawyers and telling them what they should and shouldn't do. I think the AMS has dropped the ball on ethics, and there are a number of ethical issues that deserve attention in the society that are never going to be dealt with. The NWA, I don't think has. I'm not quite sure. They're missing something that they need. They need to get nasty.
Oh.
They need to get more aggressive in recognizing unethical behavior. So, for example, in my view, the AMS should also, but they don't. The 10-day forecast, the little happy symbols and little icons of raindrops or the sun shining, and then the temperatures down to a single degree of precision at a 10-day forecast. That is just an abomination that we need to figure out how to get rid of. To me, that's unethical.
So you're saying you don't like the AccuWeather 45-day forecast then?
I think that's a safe bet.
Yes.
So would you be in favor then if we created the Doswell Society and you called people out and they had to pay attention?
Oh,
well, if we had a way to make it work, yeah,
we'll make it work.
James will get everybody to sign on, and then we'll filter all the stuff through you.
Man,
and you can tell the people who violate. You can tell them what you told me in the parking lot of Rudy's that day after the live show.
Wow.
Well,
so. Rick unleashed this. Rick, it's your fault. Tornado emergency.
That was before my time.
I have I struggle with this. So last night I didn't use that term. And I'm just afraid that people aren't listening to tornado warnings now because they're thinking, well, it's not a tornado emergency, so it's okay. Have we created a monster, Chuck?
Yes. In fact, I made that prediction the first time I heard it. It worked on May 3rd because that was a genuine emergency, and it actually earned all of the hysteria or whatever that it produced. A lot of the tornado emergencies that have been called subsequently have proven to be bogus, poor forecasts, and it's created this tremendous problem. The thing that really has bugged me has been the tendency toward this impact-based warnings crap. It's bad enough to try to forecast the weather. To forecast impacts, to me, is impossible. You can sort of say, all right, if you have a tornado headed into a metropolitan area, that's going to have some impact. No question of it. You don't have to be a genius in forensics to figure that out. But the experiments that were done, if they had worked in the direction of trying to sell people on the concept of probabilistic warnings, it would have been much more valuable to me. What they did was essentially an ill-considered, ill-executed experiment using a bunch of things that somebody somewhere dreamed up. And in particular, they dredged back up tornado emergency and all of this other stuff. And, I think we can put out graded levels of threat. I don't have any problem with that. But I'd rather do it with probabilities rather than some particular set of words. Alan Murphy told me, the late Alan Murphy, the late and great Alan Murphy, said it's so easy for words to be misinterpreted, but numbers are clean. You know, they don't admit multiple interpretations. And anybody who has half a brain can figure out that 80% is bigger than 20%. So then the only question is, what is the baseline? So, for example, on the outlooks, the probabilities are sort of geared toward outlook-sized areas. And so they end up being fairly small numbers. You know, well, there's a 15% chance of a tornado. That's a huge chance. But it's huge relative to climatology. And that's the hard part about probability, is getting that message across. That a 15% tornado probability in an outlook means, good grief, we're really under a magnified threat today.
I will say that is fairly challenging to communicate, but you can do that. You can do it. You know that there's a 15%. There's a 15% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of a given point. That's very significant. And if you explain it, and it starts to latch on, and I do think that the probabilistic outlooks are the way to go, because you're right, numbers don't lie. It's just very subjective. But guys, I have got to go do some graphics, and I'm heartbroken because I've got 17.7 more questions for Chuck. But
write them down. Send them down with the secretary.
I will. I mean, because goodness gracious. But we got to stop for a quick second. Kevin and Rick, can you? I know Kevin's got a newscast. Rick, can you stay for a few more minutes and close us out?
Yeah, I got some time.
Okay, great. Let's roll a couple of quick segments, and we'll come back we'll do weather roundup, picks of the week, and much more. WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
This is the third part of a multi-part series on air masses and their classification. In this episode of 101, we'll take a look at maritime polar air masses. As the name suggests, the source region for maritime polar air is over cold ocean currents or high-latitude ocean waters. This air does not have the moisture content of maritime tropical air, but since maritime polar air is always near saturation, orographic lifting of the air mass can produce widespread rain or snow. This air mass is notorious for producing fog, drizzle, cloudy weather, and long-lasting light to moderate rain. The temperature of maritime polar air ranges from just above freezing to below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Maritime polar air modifies as it moves over elevated terrain. On the windward side of mountain ranges, maritime polar air can produce an abundance of rain and snow. But once the air reaches the lee side of the mountains, the maritime polar air mass modifies into a continental air mass. These air masses produce cold fronts, but the air is not as cold as polar or Arctic fronts. But they are often termed Pacific fronts or backdoor cold fronts. Next up, a look at continental polar air masses. If you have a question about the weather, drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
Measure twice, cut once. It's the mantra of woodworkers and atmospheric researchers working with satellite data. Ground validations add a rich data set to observations made from space. NASA's Global Precipitation Measurement Program, or GPM, did just that back in 2014 in Rutherford County, North Carolina. For 6 weeks, researchers worked out of a set of shipping containers set up in a farmer's field among a series of transportable radars. Those ground observations were augmented by airborne ones from a NASA ER-2. That's the research version of the Air Force's U-2, along with the Cessna Citation, flying in and around storms with an instrument package similar to the ones on board GPM. Nate Johnson and I road tripped to experience the research going on there, and our timing couldn't have been better. Just as we arrived, a storm was forming over the western mountain ridge near where they were set up. This was also just before GPM overflew. Aircraft were scrambled, and we watched as data was gathered simultaneously from ground radars, mid-observation, upper atmosphere, and space. Today, researchers continue to churn on this data, and we're going to have better forecast models because of it. While you don't have a dual pole radar in your pocket, you probably have a phone that will allow you to join in on a huge ground campaign going on right now. All you need is a smartphone and NASA's free Globe Observer citizen science app. Download the app, sign in, and it will tell you when NASA's convoy of climate observing satellites passes over. This convoy, known as the afternoon train, or A train for short, pass over the equator each afternoon around 1:30 local time. As the satellites pass over, citizen scientists worldwide take pictures of the clouds from below. The view from below is compared with the view from above to better understand the structure of these clouds, amongst other things. Participants also take photos at solar noon. You can download the app and see data collected so far at observe.globe.gov. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hoagie for more spacey stuff like this.
All right. Well, James had to go and do TV. Chuck, how long have you been retired now?
Well, I retired from NSSL in 2001. And I retired from my position with the Cooperative Institute a year ago last November.
So 1 year ago. Okay. So how is your life different now? What do you do with your days besides wandering into the National Weather Center every 2 weeks and the occasional chasing?
Well, I argue with people on Facebook a lot.
Good.
Okay.
And I do a lot of garden work. I've become very interested in both vegetable and flower gardening.
Oh, okay. Tell us more about that. What are you doing in your garden?
Well, we have 6 raised beds, and I grow tomatoes and corn and peppers. I've got an artichoke plant, believe it or not, that has survived the winter once again.
Nice.
Yeah. I plant cabbages. Last year we planted kale and chard and got swamped. Probably not going to have quite so many plants this year.
Oh, too much of it, you mean?
Yeah, we were getting vast quantities of it. I also grow sweet corn and squash, both the zucchini and crookneck squash. I have a lot of fun with that. And then I have a flower garden in front that I'm slowly trying to convert over to being primarily native species.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, it's taken a while.
So I obviously had to go do my Fox show, but we'll wrap up here in a minute. But what else? What other bees are under your bonnet that you want to share with us?
Well, now that I'm retired, I'm sort of out of the loop on a lot of things. So my bees don't get stirred up as much as they used to.
Right. Do you miss that?
I occasionally see things on Facebook to get me riled up. Most of them are spelling errors and grammatical mistakes.
Very good. All right. Well, gosh, it's always a treat to have you. We certainly do appreciate it. How about a pick of the week? Do you have a pick of the week?
I forget what that is.
That's anything that you want to plug. That's a website that you find useful, or anything that you would share with people that they can learn something from or enjoy.
I never mind giving a plug for Tempest Tours.
Okay.
It's the one tour company that I feel comfortable with being associated with. We have a very deep commitment to safety, and we don't speed down the road, and we don't do wild and crazy things. The idea is to give people a safe and educational experience.
And for those who don't know, and I guess you can find out on the website, but for a chasing tour like that, there's, I assume, some sort of a rate card that you go out for X number of days. And can you give people a sense of what that is?
The prices on the tours vary because the tours have various lengths. My tour, if it goes, we're not sure it's going to go yet. We need more people to sign up.
Oh.
It's about $2,400.
Okay. And what's the trend?
That includes hotels and, various amenities. We don't pay for meals.
You pay for your own bad food at the roadside gas station.
That's right.
And what's the trend on these tours? Are more people coming, fewer people coming? There was a peak in these for a while, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen a slow decline.
Okay.
if I had to stop, if the tours don't go, it's not going to break my heart.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me a little bit more time then to chase on my own.
Right. Any sense of why there's a downward trend?
No, I'm afraid I don't keep my ear to those particular tracks.
Right. So just do a web search for Tempest Tours. Okay, very good. Rick, you got a pick of the week?
Yes, sir. James was mentioning all his speaking engagements. Well, I'm very honored to have one this weekend myself. I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers at the Southeast Severe Weather Symposium in beautiful Starkville, Mississippi at Mississippi State. I'm looking forward to it. It's my first time to be there. So
they're a good group.
They look like they really are, and I'm excited about it. I'm going to be speaking Sunday morning and talking to Aubrey earlier today. She's actually coming to attend, so that's going to be cool to have another weather brain there. Anyway,
if you go to Starkville,
yes,
okay, I recommend that you have one of the students take you over to Paps.
Yes.
Okay.
James mentions that place a lot.
Not Pops, but Paps.
Pops with an A. Okay, got it. That's on my list. I appreciate that. But yeah, looking forward to that. And my pick of the week is the webpage for that. I think the agenda will be up later. They've got some really great speakers from the Weather Channel coming and lots of good talks, people from various weather service offices. So yeah, that's my pick of the week.
Excellent. That'll be at weatherbrains.com. Mine, unfortunately, which seems to be more and more the case lately, is not weather related, but social media related. And it's actually a New York Times article from 2013. As you all know, I'm particularly interested in weather information on social media, but this is a fascinating article that was written after the rise of the data usage and data mining and all the associated things in the political game, including sort of the rise of the presidential race that brought Barack Obama to office. And I'm just kind of interested in it now because there's all this screaming going on about the Cambridge Analytics and how it may or may not have helped Trump. And the deeper issue is what, of course, Facebook is doing to us and with our data. I saw a great quote the other day, and I'm seeing it more and more in the last couple of days, but I think I saw this maybe a month or two ago, and somebody called Facebook a surveillance company. Chuck, what do you think about that?
It could be.
Yeah.
I can't exclude that possibility.
Yeah, I think it is. All right. Well, it's coming up on 10 o'clock, and so I got to go do my show. But once again, we say a great thank you to Dr. Chuck Doswell for joining us on the program. This show is done usually on Monday nights at 8:30 Central Time. You can watch at live.bigbrainsmedia.com. We thank you so much for watching. I am not James Spann, and we'll see you next week. All right, guys. Chuck, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
All right. Always
Take care.
fun. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's look and see. Yep. Don't even ask me what this is. That's a long story. Somebody sent in a fake hail picture with fake feet. All right, let me turn the camera on. We are now simulcasting WeatherBrains and Song of the Night. And there are 18 people watching a blank screen. Wow. I'm not the only guy that has no life, but great having Dr. Chuck on the show. He is my mentor. I could talk with Chuck Doswell for hours. I do have so many questions for this guy. But anyway, I got to go. So we're in a 10 o'clock newscast. So those on WeatherBrains, thank you guys for watching. Have a great week. We'll be back on track next week on Monday night. You'll have a great week. And God bless.